Commander, let's light the sky. Training sharper drone pilots, learning how to fly. Mission ready mindset, safety leading every plan. Skills that build confidence from takeoff through the scan. Tune in at Sky Commander, come join the crew today. Learning smart, fly with purpose, level up your way. We see more, no sooner, that's the edge we're here to spread. See above, go beyond, get ahead.
Okay, let's get started. Picture walking through like a local park on Tuesday afternoon, or, maybe you're strolling past a new commercial construction site.
Right, just a normal day.
Exactly. And you look up and you see this drone hovering over the trees, and your eyes naturally track down to the ground because you want to find the pilot.
Everybody does that, yeah.
Right. And if you just see one person standing there just staring intently at this plastic controller, you probably think, okay, someone playing with a toy. Or maybe like, well, I hope they know what they're doing.
Yeah, you instantly kind of judge the situation.
You totally do. But then if you change just one variable in that scene, like imagine you look down and see the pilot, but standing shoulder to shoulder with them is a second person.
Ah, the extra body.
Exactly. And the second person is wearing a high-vis neon vest, right? And they're holding a clipboard, and they just look incredibly official.
It changes everything about how you perceive them.
It does. Instantly, your brain does this little subconscious risk assessment and decides, oh, okay, they've got a spotter. This is a secure, professional, highly coordinated aviation operation.
Which is funny because it feels safe just because we are culturally conditioned to find comfort in redundancies.
Yeah.
Like two people are obviously better than one.
Right. It projects this very specific aura of discipline.
It really does. You see two individuals physically occupying the same space, looking at the same general area, and your brain just automatically categorizes them as a team. But it is completely an optical illusion of safety.
And that illusion is exactly what we are tearing apart today on this deep dive.
It's a huge myth to bust.
It really is. We are looking at a stack of sources on remotely piloted aircraft systems, basically commercial drones, and diving deep into the mechanics of crew resource management.
Or CRM, as they call it in aviation.
Right, CRM. Because the terrifying reality that's revealed in these documents is that if that second person in the high-vis vest is just standing there, like vaguely keeping an eye on things.
Or just watching the same screen the pilot is watching, which happens all the time.
Yes. If they're doing that, the mission hasn't gotten a single percentage point safer. It is quite literally just solo flying with an audience.
I mean, that phrase from the source material is chilling, isn't it? Solo flying with an audience.
It's so visceral.
It really is the absolute definition of a false sense of security. Because the pilot feels this massive reduction in anxiety simply because another human is present.
Right, like, I'm not alone, so I'm safe.
Exactly. But the operational risk, it actually remains completely unchanged. Or honestly, in some cases, it actually increases because the pilot subconsciously offloads their vigilance onto a person who isn't actually doing anything.
Wow, so it's worse than being alone. Which brings us to the core mission of this deep dive. We're going to deconstruct how elite, high-stakes, small drone teams actually operate to survive extreme cognitive pressure.
The psychology of human error is fascinating here.
Oh, it's wild. We're going to get into why your standard operating checklists are probably just an elaborate form of theatrical acting, honestly, and how to force your brain to communicate with precision when everything is going wrong.
And why being polite to the people you work with might be the absolute deadliest habit you bring to a job site.
Yes. And to you listening, the context we're using today is aviation, specifically the regulatory and psychological realities of operating drones in the US and Canada.
But the underlying mechanics are completely universal.
Right. Like we were talking about human factors, right? Cognitive bottlenecks, social friction.
Yeah, these are universal constraints that affect every single team in any high-stakes environment.
So even if you never touch a drone controller in your entire life, treat this as a masterclass in how human psychology completely breaks down under pressure.
And how you can build a team system that actually helps you think.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start by dismantling this myth of the extra body. I want to put myself in the shoes of a commercial drone pilot for a second.
All right, set the scene.
Say I've been hired to shoot some aerial video of a massive real estate development. And I know I shouldn't be out there completely alone, so I call up my buddy, and I tell him, I'll buy him lunch if he comes out and acts as my visual observer.
A classic scenario. Happens every day.
Right. He shows up, he has functioning eyes, he has a functioning brain. I tell him, hey, just watch the drone, make sure I don't hit that giant crane. Why does the FAA or Transport Canada view that as entirely insufficient? Like, what is my buddy actually missing?
Well, right off the bat, telling him to keep an eye on it is not a designated role. It's just a casual suggestion.
It's just a vibe.
Yeah, exactly. The fundamental misconception we have to break here is the idea that physical presence equals situational awareness.
Physical presence doesn't equal situational awareness.
Right. The mission only gets safer when that second person actively, systematically reduces the pilot's blind spots. When the FAA and Transport Canada talk about crew resource management, they aren't talking about like corporate teamwork fluff.
Right. We are out here doing trust falls in the parking lot.
Exactly. No trust falls. They explicitly link CRM to aeronautical decision-making.
Meaning it's a measurable, enforceable standard of behavior.
Precisely. CRM is the disciplined, structured use of all available resources, meaning people, procedures, and hardware, to keep the mission safe precisely at the moment when the pilot's attention inevitably gets narrow.
Which it always will.
It always does. And if your buddy doesn't know the exact parameters of the flight plan or the specific limits of the airspace or the precise vocabulary required to stop your thumbs from moving the joysticks, he is not a resource.
He is a spectator.
He's a spectator. He's an audience member.
This leads to a fascinating concept in the text that I want to dwell on for a second, the mission brain. It completely reframes how we think about group intelligence, I think.
It really does. Because a drone mission is a highly complex, continuously evolving cognitive event.
A lot of moving parts.
Right. And if you have a 2-person or 3-person crew on a site, the absolute worst-case scenario is having 3 separate brains operating in isolated silos.
Just totally disconnected.
Yeah, like you have the pilot thinking about the camera angle, the observer thinking about a helicopter miles away, and the client thinking about the invoice.
Right. Everyone's in their own little world.
Exactly. And that is a recipe for a mid-air collision. You don't want separate brains. You want to fuse them into one single mission brain.
So the individuals basically become components of a larger processing unit.
That's a great way to visualize it. The pilot is one component of the mission brain. Specifically, the component executing physical control and final decisions.
Okay, they're the hands.
Right. And the visual observer is another component, strictly tasked with protecting the outside physical environment. The physical checklist you hold in your hand is yet another component, serving as external hard drive memory.
So your buddy on the real estate shoot isn't integrated into that mission brain at all.
Not even a little bit. He's just standing next to it.
And when a pilot doesn't build that integrated brain, they fall into what the sources call the hero pilot mindset. I found this incredibly relatable even outside of aviation.
Oh, it's everywhere.
It really is. It's the freelancer or the team leader who accidentally becomes the entire operation.
Because, on a beautiful, calm, sunny day, with absolutely no wind and no distractions, a skilled human being actually can do it all.
They can pull it off.
Yeah, they can fly the aircraft, frame up the perfect sweeping cinematic shot, monitor the fluctuating battery telemetry, keep one eye on the airspace map, and politely answer the client's questions about video formatting all simultaneously.
But just because you can juggle flaming swords in your living room doesn't mean you should do it in a crowded restaurant.
That is a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And the insidious part is that pilots will quietly take immense pride in this juggling act.
They feed your ego with it.
They do. They internalize the stress. They think carrying the entire weight of the mission alone and pulling it off is the ultimate mark of an advanced professional.
Like it proves how good they are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They view asking for structured help as a sign of weakness or incompetence.
When the reality is the exact opposite.
Professionalism in high-reliability organizations isn't about carrying more cognitive weight than everyone else. It's about engineering a system that does not depend on one single, easily overloaded biological human brain.
Because the sources refer to the hero pilot as a single point of failure, which is a phrase that should strike fear into the heart of anyone doing high-stakes work.
It's a terrifying concept.
If I'm the only person on that construction site who knows the maximum altitude we are legally allowed to fly, and I'm the only one who knows the exact battery percentage where we absolutely must turn back.
You're holding all the cards.
Right. If I'm the only one who knows the emergency procedure for a lost radio link and the only one who knows what hazards require an immediate halt, I am a walking liability.
You are. Because human attention is finite and fragile.
So fragile.
If you, the single point of failure, get distracted by a sudden glare on your screen for just 5 seconds, the entire safety apparatus of that mission collapses instantly. There's absolutely no backup.
Because the guy standing next to you, looking at the same screen, doesn't know the battery is critically low.
No, because you never briefed him on what a critical battery looks like.
Okay, so throwing warm bodies at a job site doesn't magically create safety? We have to somehow connect these separate, isolated brains into one unified, functioning mission brain before the drone even leaves the dirt.
That's the challenge.
And the sources point directly to checklists as the mechanism for this. But reading through the documents, it becomes painfully obvious that the way, 99% of people use checklists is completely wrong.
Checklists are arguably the most misunderstood operational tool in existence.
Really? How so?
Well, a weak checklist is just a piece of paper. You look at it, you mentally verify, propellers are on, battery is charged, GPS signal is green, and you push the launch button.
Just a chore to get out of the way.
Right. But a truly strong checklist does not exist to check the hardware. A strong checklist is a crew alignment tool.
Okay.
It checks the humans.
The text draws a brutal and frankly hilarious distinction between a genuine checklist procedure and what they call checklist theater.
It's such a good term.
I want to dig into this because I have absolutely been guilty of checklist theater in my own life.
We all have. The phrase is brilliant because it perfectly captures the performance aspect of the behavior. Checklist theater happens when the familiarity breeds speed.
And speed breeds a casual attitude.
Exactly. And a casual attitude breeds fake complete checks. You see this on job sites all the time. The pilot is looking down at their phone or tablet, swiping through an app, and they call out, "Battery's good." Someone vaguely nearby says, "Yep."
Airspace clear, yep.
"Landing zone secure, yep."
But the punchline is that nobody actually looked at any of those things in that moment. The pilot is looking at a screen, the person saying, "Yep," is probably looking at their own shoes.
Nobody looked.
Yeah.
They just confirmed the prevailing vibes of the site. They felt safe, so they answered as if the site was safe.
But vibes do not protect an aviation mission.
No, they don't. Checklist theater is incredibly dangerous because it provides everyone involved with the psychological feeling of discipline without requiring the actual rigorous behavior of discipline.
You feel protected because a ritual occurred, like doing a rain dance and feeling accomplished.
Exactly, a rain dance.
But that ritual didn't catch the fact that the return to home altitude was set lower than the crane that just moved it into the area.
Yeah.
It didn't establish who has the authority to yell stop if a truck pulls in. It was literally just paperwork with a pulse.
A performance of safety rather than the execution of safety.
This flipped my entire understanding of checklists. I always conceptualize them purely as memory aids, like a grocery list. Don't forget the SD card, don't forget the lens filter.
Most people do.
But the sources explicitly state that a useful RPAS checklist actually performs 5 entirely distinct jobs. Memory is merely the first one.
Let's explore those 5 jobs, because they map perfectly onto cognitive load theory.
Okay, hit me. What's the first one in detail?
So the first job is, as you said, protecting memory. Humans forget incredibly obvious things under pressure.
Right.
A pilot can sit in a quiet, air-conditioned office and perfectly recite 10 pre-flight steps, but put that same pilot in a muddy field at a 15-knot wind gusting to 20, have the client tapping their watch, and add harsh sunlight glaring off the control screen.
It all goes out the window.
It does. That pilot will absolutely forget to check if the obstacle avoidance sensors are turned on. The checklist externalizes that memory.
So it takes the burden of remembering off the biological brain and puts it on the system. What's the second job?
Protecting sequencing. Doing the right things in the exact right order.
Give me a real-world example of why sequencing matters for a drone crew.
Okay, imagine returning to land. You don't want to descend the drone to 10 feet off the ground, maneuver it over the landing pad, and then suddenly realize nobody briefed the client's staff to stop walking through the landing zone.
Oh, right, because now the hazard is already there.
Exactly. The checklist forces you to clear the zone before you initiate the descent. It puts the critical decisions ahead of the physical consequences.
That makes perfect sense. Job number 3, protecting communication. This is where it moves from a solo tool to a team tool, right?
Yes. The checklist forces silent assumptions out into the open air. In an unstructured crew, the pilot assumes the visual observer is watching for helicopters.
And the visual observer assumes the pilot sees the delivery truck pulling in.
It is a silent, deadly agreement where everyone thinks someone else is handling the risk. The checklist interrupts that silence. when the checklist forces the pilot to ask, who is maintaining visual on the East Road? Someone have to actually claim that responsibility out loud.
Which bleeds right into the fourth job, protecting role clarity. The checklist isn't just asking if the plastic and metal aircraft is ready to fly, it is interrogating whether the humans are ready to function.
Exactly. Who is the designated pilot in command? Who is the visual observer? If the client asks the question, who answers it?
And finally, the fifth job.
Protecting decision quality. It forces a pause. It creates a firewall between the rush of setting up the gear and the irreversible action of taking off.
I kept thinking about surgeons while reading this section. A cardiovascular surgeon doesn't use a pre-op checklist because they forgot the steps to bypass a heart.
No, they've done it 1,000 times.
Right. They use the checklist because the biological stakes are simply too massive to rely on organic memory while under the intense environmental pressure of an operating room.
It's about managing pressure.
And in the commercial drone world, this level of rigor isn't just a good idea. It is the regulatory backbone of the industry.
It is heavily mandated. If you look at Transport Canada's VRR number 1.23, it strictly requires that normal and emergency procedures be established for all RPAS operations.
We are talking about documented step-by-step procedures here.
Documented procedures for pre-flight, takeoff, approach, recovery, lost command link, flyways, and how to detect and avoid hazards. You cannot legally wing it.
And the crucial detail that caught my eye, it's not enough to just own a manual that sits in the glove box of your truck.
No, definitely not. The regulations state those procedures must be reviewed before takeoff and must be immediately available to the crew.
To make this hyper-practical, the sources break these procedures down into 3 operational layers. Layer 1 is the mission brief.
Right, the big picture.
This happens before you even pull the drone out of the case. Who is doing what? Where are physical boundaries? What are the stop conditions?
All foundational stuff.
Then layer 2 is the pre-launch go-no-go check. This is the final ritual right before the propellers spin up. But layer 3 is the one that fascinated me. In-flight trigger checks.
Because most amateur crews only ever do layer 2.
They just check the battery and go.
Yep. They verify the batteries at 100% right before launch. They take off. And they consider the checklist portion of the day completely finished.
But professional crews don't stop there.
Professional crews utilize all 3 layers. Layer 3, the in-flight trigger checks, are short, standardized callouts tied to specific risk points during the actual flight.
Like reaching a certain battery percentage?
Exactly. Or checking the environment at specific intervals, like battery at return threshold, landing zones still clear, airspace scans negative for traffic.
Keeps everyone looped in.
These trigger checks are how a crew catches slow, insidious drift before it manifests as a sudden emergency.
There is one specific question in the Layer 1 brief that the sources highlight as the absolute silver bullet for safety.
The anti-complacency weapon.
Yes. The ultimate anti-complacency weapon that must be asked before every single launch. And that question is, what changed since we planned the job? I want to park here for a minute because this is profound.
It is the single most important question a team can ask. Think about how jobs were actually planned. You might do a site survey on Google Earth 3 days before the shoot.
Right.
You might even visit the site in person 3 hours before the shoot. But the world is dynamic. By the time you actually put the drone on the launch pad, reality has shifted.
And human brains hate updating their mental models. We want to execute the plan we fell asleep thinking about.
We cling to the outdated plan. Asking what changed forces the crew to forcibly update their mental model from theoretical planning to physical reality.
So you have to look around and say, did the wind direction shift?
Did a massive delivery truck park near our alternate landing zone? Did the sun angle drop, creating blinding glare on the controller screen?
Did the client suddenly walk up and say, hey, while you're up there, can you fly over to that other building?
Yes. The introduction of a new variable. If you don't explicitly pause and ask what changed, the crew will try to execute the original safe plan in a new, unsafe environment.
And how you execute this checklist matters immensely. The text is incredibly rigid on this point. A checklist reads silently in your head does nothing.
Nothing at all.
A checklist rapidly click through on a touchscreen app while your observer is scrolling social media does nothing. The checklist must be spoken.
Spoken out loud, using a challenge and response format. It establishes a shared vocabulary and a shared reality before the mission gets loud and chaotic.
So everyone is on the exact same page.
Exactly. When the pilot physically says out loud, lost visual means stop and hold, The entire crew now possesses the exact same expectation of behavior if the drone happens to disappear behind a tree line.
All right, so we've done the work on the ground, the crew is aligned, we've spoken the checklist, we've acknowledged what changed in the environment, the propellers spin up, the drone lifts off, and immediately everything we just built is placed under massive stress.
The stress test begins.
Because the moment that aircraft is airborne, the pilot's brain is under attack from a relentless barrage of inputs. The sources use a very specific term for this: task saturation.
To understand task saturation, you have to picture the pilot's working memory as an airport control tower, but a tower with a strictly limited number of radio channels.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
On a simple, perfectly calm flight in an empty field, those channels are easily managed. One channel is dedicated to the physical control sticks. One channel is monitoring altitude. One channel is looking at the camera feed. One channel is keeping an eye on the sky.
So the tower is operating at maybe 40% capacity? Plenty of room.
Plenty of room. But commercial jobs do not happen in empty fields on calm days. Real life starts happening.
The variables multiply exponentially.
Suddenly, a 15-knot wind gust hits, so the physical control channel requires more bandwidth to keep the drone steady. A bright glare hits the tablet, so the visual processing channel is straining to read the telemetry.
And then the client taps the pilot on the shoulder and asks, hey, how long until we get that wide shot?
Right. Now an auditory and social channel is occupied. A truck moves near the landing zone. The battery drops to 30% and the controller starts beeping.
The control tower is completely catastrophically overwhelmed. Every channel is screaming.
That is task saturation. The input exceeds the brain's processing capability.
And what's truly terrifying is how a human being reacts when they hit that saturation point. It's an involuntary psychological response called narrowing.
Narrowing is so dangerous.
I think my assumption, and probably a lot of people's assumption, is that an overwhelmed pilot would start panicking. Like their hands would shake, they would start yelling, it would be obvious they were losing control. But the sources say the exact opposite happens.
Panicking takes energy. The saturated brain doesn't have spare energy to panic. It is desperately trying to survive the overload by triaging tasks. It starts ruthlessly dropping inputs.
They just shut down.
The pilot gets incredibly quiet. Their physical posture might lock up. They will stare at the control screen for uncomfortably long periods of time, completely ignoring the physical sky.
Because the screen is the most immediate source of critical data.
Exactly. Their verbal responses degrade into single syllables. Yep. Okay.
Yay.
They completely stop narrating their actions.
And they get cranky too, right?
Oh, yeah. They will visibly flinch or get highly irritated if someone tries to talk to them because that new auditory input threatens to collapse the fragile house of cards they are maintaining in their working memory.
And here is the most dangerous part of cognitive narrowing. The pilot is usually entirely unaware it is happening.
They have no idea.
They feel like they're doing a great job because they are successfully keeping the drone hovering and they're successfully looking at the camera shots. So their internal narrative is, I am flying this mission perfectly.
Meanwhile, their functional awareness has shrunk from a 360-degree sphere to the size of a postage stamp. They are completely functionally blind to the low-flying helicopter approaching from the south or the battery rapidly draining towards zero.
This is the exact mechanism behind so many accidents. The pilot was staring right at the problem, but their brains simply dropped the data.
It just couldn't process it.
So how do we stop this? The sources introduced the task bucket method, which is essentially a way to pre-distribute the cognitive load before saturation ever happens.
You cannot wait until the pilot is actively saturated to try and help them. By then, they can't process your help. You have to design the crew structure to prevent the control tower from overflowing in the first place.
So we use buckets.
The task bucket method divides all mission duties into distinct, non-overlapping categories.
Bucket 1, what is it?
Bucket 1 is flying the aircraft, maintaining positive control, and ensuring a safe recovery. That bucket is owned exclusively by the pilot in command. Period.
Nobody else touches bucket 1. Okay, bucket 2.
Bucket 2 is protecting the outside picture, scanning the airspace, watching the ground, managing the physical environment. That bucket is owned entirely by the visual observer.
So the pilot doesn't have to worry about the airspace because they trust the VO is carrying that bucket. Bucket 3.
Bucket 3 is protecting the deliverable, getting the perfect cinematic shot, managing camera exposure, ensuring the sensor data is collecting properly. Ideally, this bucket is held by a dedicated payload operator or data lead.
And bucket 4, which might be the most crucial one on a stressful site.
Protecting the pilot from distraction, intercepting the client, managing bystanders, answering questions. Owned by a client handler.
So let's turn this to the real world. If you are a solo operator or even a two-person team, ask yourself this. Can you, as the pilot, calculate an invoice adjustment while simultaneously maintaining manual flight control near a cell phone tower without ever looking away from the aircraft?
Most people would say no.
If your honest, ego-free answer is maybe, or it depends on the win, then your duties are bleeding across buckets. You are setting yourself up for saturation.
And inevitably, even with buckets assigned, a moment will come where duties conflict. The pilot is trying to fly safely, the data lead wants a lower camera angle, and the client wants to shoot for 5 more minutes.
Everything clashes at once.
When those desires clash, the crew cannot freeze and debate what to do. They must instantly rely on the priority ladder.
This framework is the ultimate cheat code for high-stakes decision-making. Because when pressure hits, human beings scramble their priorities. A client yelling at you for a specific sunset shot feels incredibly, overwhelmingly urgent in the moment.
This social pressure is immense.
But the priority ladder forces you to realize that urgency is not the same thing as importance.
The priority ladder strips away the emotion and provides a cold, hard hierarchy of values. The crew must internalize this ladder completely.
Let's climb the ladder. What's the absolute untouchable top rung?
The top rung of the ladder is people safety. Nothing, absolutely nothing overrides the imperative to prevent human injury.
Right, you don't fly over a crowd just to get a cool shot of a concert. Rung 2.
Manned aircraft and airspace safety. If a helicopter enters your airspace, everything else on this ladder ceases to matter. You yield.
Okay, rung 3.
Rung 3 is legal compliance, operating within your permitted limits.
Rung 4.
Rung 4 is aircraft control, maintaining the physical link and stability of the drone.
Okay, let's pause here. Rung 4 is aircraft control. Rung 5 is site and property protection. So you're saying that maintaining control of the drone is a higher priority than making sure the drone doesn't crash into a building?
Yes, because if you lose aircraft control, you cannot guarantee property protection anyway. You must secure control first, then steer away from the building.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. Okay, rung 6.
Battery and recovery margin, ensuring you have enough energy to return and land safely.
Rung 7.
Rung 7 is the mission objective, getting the general data you came for.
Rung 8.
Rung 8 is data quality, getting the perfect, beautifully exposed, flawlessly framed version of that data.
And the very bottom rung, the absolute lowest priority on a job site, rung 9.
Client preference.
I love this so much. The person paying the thousands of dollars to fund the entire operation is dead last on the priority ladder.
Dead last. Because a client's preference for a specific camera angle cannot ever outrank battery margin. A client's desire to fly closer to a structure cannot ever outrank legal compliance.
It just takes the debate right out of it.
If the crew understands and agrees upon this ladder before they launch, they don't have to waste cognitive bandwidth debating it when the battery is flashing red and the client is aggressively demanding one more pass.
The text summarizes it perfectly. Safety roles beat data roles. Data roles beat client preference. Client preference does not beat landing safety, ever.
It's a very clean rule.
Okay, so we've established that the pilot is locked into bucket 1. They are managing flight control. They are at the top of the priority ladder. They are operating at 90% cognitive capacity. Who is acting as the shield for the rest of the world?
Enters a visual observer.
But as we transition into this, it becomes clear that a VO's job is fundamentally misunderstood. They are not supposed to just watch the drone like a fan at an air show.
Not at all. If we look at the regulatory definition under FAA Part 107 in the U.S. or the CARS in Canada, the VO is defined as an active, legally mandated safety layer.
An active layer, not a passenger.
Their primary responsibility is to maintain effective and timely communication with the pilot to detect conflicting traffic and physical hazards. They are not a passive spectator, they are a human radar system.
But human beings are flawed radar systems.
They're very flawed.
The sources point out 2 massive, incredibly common traps that VOs fall into, completely destroying their effectiveness. The first one has a great name, screen gravity. I have felt this pull myself.
Screen gravity is a profoundly powerful psychological phenomenon. Think about the physical environment of a drone shoot. The sky is massive, mostly empty, visually monotonous, and frankly boring.
Very boring.
The drone's camera feed, however, is being broadcast in brilliant high definition onto an iPad right at chest level. It's dynamic, it's interesting, it's a cool perspective of the world. It is literally the entire reason everyone drove out to the site in the first place.
It's a dopamine machine compared to the empty sky.
Exactly. So human nature naturally pulls the VO's eyes away from the vast, boring sky and directly down to the glowing screen. They drift over until they are standing shoulder to shoulder with a pilot, watching the cinematic video feed.
Which means the multi-$1,000 safety system you just built has collapsed.
It's gone.
The pilot is looking at the screen, the VO is looking at the exact same screen, and absolutely nobody is watching the physical world where a very real agricultural crop duster might be flying at 100 miles an hour.
You have doubled down on the exact same blind spot.
So what's the second trap?
The second major trap is almost as bad. Let's say you cure screen gravity. The VO is actually looking up. The mistake they make now is staring aimlessly at the sky without a structured scan pattern.
Just keep an eye out, fails again.
A professional VO does not randomly look around. They employ a continuous, structured, repeatable scan loop. The military uses this, commercial aviation uses this. The structure prevents the brain from zoning out.
The text outlines this loop clearly, and it involves watching 5 distinct worlds: aircraft, airspace, ground, boundary, pilot, repeat. Let's dig into these 5 worlds, starting with the obvious one, airspace.
Airspace isn't just tilting your head back and looking at the clouds. It requires anticipatory scanning. Where is traffic likely to emerge from?
Like mapping entry vectors.
Yes. A professional VO maps the entry vectors. If there's a hospital 3 miles west, they heavily scan the western horizon for low-flying medical helicopters. If they're near power lines, they scan for utility inspection aircraft.
Then they shift to the aircraft world.
Right. They establish visual line of sight with the drone itself. Is it maintaining its holding pattern? Is the wind pushing it off course? Is it blending into a gray cloud bank, making it hard to track?
Then the scan moves to the ground world. And this is where amateur crews always get sloppy, because everyone is so obsessed with the flying robot that they forget the Earth exists.
They forget the ground is alive and moving. While the drone is at 200 feet, what is happening below it? The VO has to scan for pedestrians wandering off a hiking trail and walking directly under the flight path.
Or vehicles.
Yeah, they have to watch the access road to see if a cement truck is backing into their designated emergency landing zone.
The 4th world is the mission boundary.
This is a check against scope creep. During the pre-flight brief, the crew agreed on a physical box they would stay within. The VO checks. Are we still inside the box? Is the pilot slowly, subconsciously drifting further away or lower than we agreed?
But it was the 5th part of this scan loop that completely stopped me in my tracks. The loop is aircraft, airspace, ground, boundary, and pilot.
This is the absolute pinnacle of crew resource management. The VO is not just tasked with protecting the aircraft from the physical world. They are explicitly tasked with protecting the pilot from cognitive overload.
This requires an incredible level of trust and vulnerability. You're telling me the VO is supposed to turn around and actively monitor the psychological state of the person holding the controller.
Yes, absolutely. They are watching for the physical symptoms of narrowing we discussed earlier.
So they're looking for what, specifically?
The VO checks the pilot. Is the pilot blinking normally? Have they stopped responding to verbal call-outs? Are they gripping the controller with white knuckles? Are they visibly sweating or sighing in frustration?
And if they see that?
If the VO observes these symptoms, they recognize the pilot is saturated, the mission brain is failing.
And the VO has the authority to intervene.
A professional VO has the absolute authority to call a reset. They will state, pilot workload appears high. Recommend stop and hold to rebuild awareness. They pull the pilot out of the dive.
That is profound. It's like having a dedicated cognitive safety net. And this ties beautifully into the core metaphor the sources use for the visual observer. The VO as a time machine. A weak VO, they argue, acts like a historian. A historian simply reports on the past.
And a historian on an aviation crew is worse than useless.
It's as the hazard already happened.
Exactly. A historian VO watches a situation unfold, waits until the consequence occurs, and then reports it. They say, hey, you just drifted past the property line. Or, oh man, a truck just parked right where we were going to land.
They give the pilot nothing but regret. Thanks for telling me after the fact.
Exactly. A strong VO, however, operates as a time machine, projecting 10 to 15 seconds into the future. They do not report what is happening. They report what is about to matter.
Okay, give me an example of that.
They scan the ground, see a truck turn onto an access road half a mile away, calculate its trajectory, and report. Advisory. Truck moving eastbound will intersect landing zone in 30 seconds.
Early warning gives the pilot options. Late warning removes options and forces panic reactions.
If the pilot has 30 seconds, they can calmly ascend, hold position, or choose an alternate landing pad. If they have 3 seconds, they are forced into an emergency evasive maneuver.
Okay, so the VO is scanning perfectly. They are operating as a time machine. They see the truck 30 seconds in the future. But seeing the hazard in their own brain is completely meaningless if they cannot instantly, accurately transmit that context information into the pilot's highly saturated brain.
This is where crews fall apart.
Which brings us to the actual literal words coming out of their mouths, the language of survival.
This is the bottleneck where perfectly good operations live or die. You can have the best observational skills in the world, but if your language is flawed, the mission fails.
So what's the biggest threat here?
The single greatest threat to crew communication is vague, socially polite language.
The source material contains a brutal teardown of phrases that I guarantee every single person listening has used on a job. Phrases like, watch that, be careful, probably fine, keep an eye on that guy, or I think we are okay. The sources refer to these phrases as creating fog.
Because what is the pilot actually supposed to do with watch that? You've just handed an already overloaded brain a complex linguistic puzzle.
Right, watch what?
The pilot hears, watch that, and now has to mentally ask, watch what? A bird, a power line, the battery gauge, the client behind me. Where is it? How fast is it moving?
The quote from the text that had me laughing out loud described a soft, vague warning like, be careful, as a weather report from a nervous squirrel.
It's so accurate.
It effectively communicates that you, the VO, are experiencing anxiety, but it provides the pilot with absolutely zero actionable data. So let's run a translation drill. If I am the nervous squirrel VO and I see a hazard, how do I translate my anxiety into what the sources call the strong communication formula?
The strong communication formula strips away all conversational filler and delivers data in a predictable 5-part structure: hazard, location, movement, urgency, action.
By putting the data in the same order every time, the pilot's brain doesn't have to work hard to parse the sentence.
So instead of saying, hey man, there's a guy walking around over there, be careful.
Right, what do I say instead?
You apply the formula: hazard, pedestrian, location, at the west fence line, movement, moving east toward the drop zone, action, hold altitude.
It's surgical. Hazard, location, movement, action. And the urgency is baked into the command structure. I noticed the sources define a 3-level escalation model for urgency.
Yes, to prevent crying wolf.
This is brilliant because if every single call-out sounds like a panicked scream, the pilot will eventually tune the VO out.
If everything is an emergency, nothing is an emergency. The escalation model provides a graded vocabulary. Level 1 is an advisory.
What does that sound like?
This is a low-stress transfer of information. It means I see something, I'm monitoring it, no immediate action is required from you. For example, advisory: white truck parked on the east road, well outside our boundary.
It updates the mission brain's situational awareness without spiking anyone's heart rate.
Exactly. Level 2 is caution. This means a hazard is developing. Prepare to take action. Caution: white truck is now moving toward the landing zone.
So the pilot hears this and mentally preloads an evasive maneuver just in case.
Yes. And level 3 is the ultimate safety brake.
What's level 3?
Level 3 is stop. It requires immediate specific action to preserve safety. Stop. Truck has entered the landing zone. Abort descent. Climb to 100 feet.
What fascinates me is the psychology behind why people default to the nervous squirrel language instead of these clear commands. It almost always comes down to social friction, right?
It is entirely rooted in social evolution. Human beings are deeply wired to be polite, to avoid sounding bossy, and to avoid social conflict. We soften our language to protect the feelings of the person we are talking to.
Plus, we hate being wrong.
Furthermore, we are terrified of being wrong. If VO yells, "Stop! Bird!" at 12 o'clock, and it turns out to just be a piece of floating debris, they feel foolish. They lose face.
There is also a massive issue with the authority gradient. If you have a 22-year-old junior employee acting as the VO for a 50-year-old veteran pilot who owns the company, that junior employee is going to be terrified to issue a direct command to their boss.
Which is why the culture established by the pilot is so critical. The text hits this concept incredibly hard. Politeness protects feelings. Precision protects the mission.
The pilot has to encourage it.
The pilot must actively demand precision and completely remove the social stigma of being wrong. If that junior VO calls a stop, for a flock of birds, and the birds detour away at the last second, the pilot must not roll their eyes. The pilot must say, "Good call, good spot, keep scanning."
You have to reward the false alarm. A false alarm is a cheap safety test. It proves the system works. If you punish the false alarm, the VO will second-guess their eyes next time, and the delay will cause a crash.
Exactly. And to guarantee that these precise messages are not just spoken, but actually received and processed by the pilot's saturated brain, the crew must employ closed-loop communication.
This is a cure for the deadliest assumption in teamwork. I said it, so I assumed you heard me.
In aviation, assuming someone heard you is how airplanes fly into mountains. The environment is noisy, headsets cut out, and brains drop data.
So how does the closed loop work?
Closed-loop mechanics are simple, rigid, and mandatory. Step 1. The sender transmits the message. VO says, "Stop. Vehicle entering landing zone."
Step 2. The receiver must actively repeat the critical information and state their resulting action. So the pilot replies, "Vehicle in landing zone, aborting descent, holding at 80 feet.
And crucially, step 3. The sender confirms the loop. The VO says, "Confirmed. Vehicle still moving."
The loop is closed. The VO knows the pilot heard the warning. The pilot knows the VO understands the action being taken. It leaves absolutely zero room for ambiguity.
Not at all.
Okay, let's step back. Let's imagine we have built the perfect operational crew. We've cured the pilot's cognitive overload by distributing tasks into buckets. We've trained the VO to use a continuous scan loop and cured their screen gravity.
Sounds like a dream team.
We have everyone utilizing precision callouts, the escalation model, and closed-loop communication. They are a well-oiled machine. What could possibly go wrong now?
A lot, actually.
Right. The sources outline 2 massive invisible hazards that take down even the most advanced crews: familiarity and what they call the client leak.
Familiarity is the silent killer of highly experienced teams. New amateur crews make mistakes because they lack structure and don't know what they're doing.
But experienced crews.
Experienced professional crews make mistakes because they get too comfortable. They stop fearing the environment. The single most dangerous phrase a veteran drone crew can utter is, "We'll do it the same as last time."
Oh, we know this power substation. We flew it last month. It was a 10-minute flight. No need to bust out the full spoken checklist. Let's just throw the bird in the air.
And that familiarity leads to assumption lock. They assume the wind patterns will be identical. They assume the pedestrian traffic will be non-existent because it was empty last month.
But it's never identical.
The physical world is never identical twice. Familiarity causes them to skip the what changed question, and they fly right into a new hazard while looking at an old mental map.
The other invisible hazard is the client leak. This is such a brilliant term. It occurs when non-mission critical requests or questions from the client bypass the system and leak directly into the pilot's brain during a high workload moment.
And the sources are careful to point out that clients are almost never malicious.
Right, they aren't trying to crash the drone.
They are just invested in the product, they are excited about the cinematic possibilities, or they're stressed about proving ROI to their boss. They don't understand the cognitive load required to fly.
So they lean over the pilot's shoulder and ask, "Hey, can we just get one more angle of that roof?"
Which seems like a harmless request to them. But if the drone is currently fighting a 20-knot headwind with a flashing low battery warning while navigating a complex return-to-home sequence over a parking lot,
that harmless request is a cognitive bomb.
to illustrate exactly how these weak signals familiarity, sloppy language, and the client leak compound into a disaster, the text provides a composite cautionary tale.
The substation orbit that got too quiet.
It is a masterclass in how a system degrades piece by piece.
Let's walk through this narrative because it highlights everything we've talked about. We have a 4-person operation. Mason is the pilot, Priya is the visual observer, Owen is the data lead, and the client is standing right there on the grass with them. They are inspecting a power substation. What is the very first weak signal?
It begins on the ground, the casual brief. They're familiar with the site, so Mason, the pilot, just says, "Okay, let's get this done. We'll do a quick orbit of the main transformer." That's it.
No roles explicitly assigned, no stop words defined, nobody asks what changed. They launch based on vibes.
Second weak signal, the crew falls victim to screen gravity. Owen, the data lead, wants a lower camera angle. The client agrees, saying, "Yeah, lower would be great."
And Priya, the VO who is supposed to be scanning the sky, hears this and naturally leans in to look at the iPad to see the new angle.
For a span of perhaps 5 to 10 seconds, absolutely nobody is looking at the physical sky. It is a total screen cluster.
Third weak signal. the client leak occurs. The client points at the screen and says, "Can we get a closer look at that northeast corner?"
Mason, wanting to please the client, agrees and manually descends the drone closer to the high-voltage equipment.
The physical risk increases. Mason's cognitive workload spikes. But nobody calls a pause to evaluate this newly introduced variable.
Fourth weak signal. The nervous squirrel warning. Priya, having finally looked up from the screen, spots a white utility truck driving down the dirt access road.
But instead of using the strong communication formula, she reverts to polite, vague language. She says, "Hey, there's a truck over there."
Mason, deeply focused on flying close to the transformer, just grunts, "Okay." Mason has no idea where the truck is, which direction it's heading, or how fast it's moving. He assumed "over there" meant safely far away.
Fifth weak signal, the compounding crisis. Mason gets a critical low battery warning. He announces he has to return home immediately. But at that exact moment, the utility truck pulls up and parks directly over their planned landing pad.
The client, trying to be helpful, says, they'll probably move in a minute. Owen, the data lead, pushes the priority ladder by asking, "Can we just finish this one pass before we land?"
Priya, the VO, feels deeply uncomfortable with the dying battery and the blocked landing zone. But the authority gradient silences her. She doesn't want to be the difficult person ruining the shoot, so she stays quiet.
The result. Mason is forced to improvise an emergency landing in a tight, rocky, unbreezed alternate spot with a screaming battery, surrounded by high-voltage equipment.
They manage to land safely. No crash, no sparks. But as the text powerfully emphasizes, a safe landing does not mean it was a good mission.
It was a catastrophic failure of the crew resource management system. The utility truck didn't cause the near miss. The dying battery didn't cause it.
The absolute lack of structured communication caused it.
Exactly. So how does a professional crew prevent the client leak from compromising the pilot? The sources offer two non-negotiable rules. First, the implementation of the sterile cockpit.
This is a direct transplant from commercial airline regulations, isn't it?
It is. A sterile cockpit rule dictates that during any critical phase of flight, which includes launch, landing, complex obstacle proximity, traffic conflicts, low battery states, or any abnormal system behavior, all non-mission critical conversation must completely, instantly stop.
No joking about the weather, no discussing what's for lunch, and absolutely no client requests regarding camera angles.
The audio channel is locked down strictly for safety callouts.
And the second rule, to enforce that sterile environment, is utilizing the client handler. If you have a small team, maybe the data lead doubles as the client handler.
Their primary job is to act as a physical and verbal shield for the pilot.
If the drone is in a complex descent and the client excitedly steps forward to ask, "Did you guys make sure to get the shot of the HVAC unit?" the handler intercepts them.
The handler steps in and says, "We are currently in a safety pause for landing. I am writing down your request right now, and we will review the footage together the moment the aircraft is safely secured on the ground."
It is such a brilliant, polite way to maintain the boundary. It's exactly like trying to merge your car onto a chaotic, rain-slicked highway surrounded by semi-trucks, and your passenger leans over and asks you to solve an algebra problem.
You don't solve the problem.
You turn the radio off, tell them to hold on, and you merge safely. Safety calls override shot requests. Every single time.
Every time.
All right, the drone is on the ground, the battery is pulled, the client is happy with the footage, the gear is packed into the Pelican cases, the crew is driving home, the mission is over. Right.
Wrong.
Wrong. How the team talks about the mission after the propeller stops spinning is the final and perhaps most critical component of CRM. It determines if they will survive their next complex operation.
We are talking about the debrief, and the text is incredibly clear. A professional debrief is not a group hug.
Not a pizza party.
It is not an opportunity to pat each other on the back. And conversely, it is not a punitive blame session where the pilot yells at everyone for their mistakes. It is a clinical, egoless inspection of the system.
And one of the most dangerous traps in debriefing is the nothing happened fallacy.
Nothing crashed, nobody got hurt, the client is happy, therefore we executed perfectly. That is a massive logical flaw.
Because you could have just been lucky.
Exactly. A quiet mission does not automatically equal a perfect mission. Sometimes, as we saw in the substation story, it just means the crew got incredibly lucky despite a broken system.
To combat this, the sources outline a rigid 5-part CRM debrief framework. Let's explore these because they force a level of operational honesty that is rare in any industry. Part 1 is asking, what was seen?
Building a shared reality. What actually occurred during the flight? We had a wind warning at 100 feet, and a helicopter passed 3 miles south. You established the baseline facts.
Part 2. What was missed?
Where did our mental models fail? We assumed the access road would be closed, but utility trucks were using it, identifying where reality deviated from the plan.
Part 3. What was said?
A review of the actual language used under pressure. When the truck appeared, did we use the strong communication formula, or did we revert to vague warnings?
And then we reach Part 4. This is the absolute goldmine of the entire document. The question every team must ask: what stayed unsaid?
I cannot overstate how powerful this question is. What stayed unsaid cuts cleanly through the polite veneer of teamwork and strikes directly at the hidden risk culture of the group.
But it requires a massive amount of vulnerability. You are asking someone to admit, hey, I saw the drone getting dangerously close to those high voltage lines, but I didn't say anything because I assumed you had it under control and I was afraid of sounding like a nervous novice.
It is terrifying to admit that. But if the pilot does not explicitly ask that question, they will never ever discover the authority gradients, the social fears, and the self-doubt that are silently degrading their crew's effectiveness from the inside out. You have to actively excavate those hidden hesitations.
Which brings us to the final piece, Part 5. How do we tighten the loop next time?
Meaning the debrief must end with a specific, actionable behavioral fix, not a vague platitude.
Saying we need to communicate better next time is a completely useless takeaway.
It changes nothing. A real fix sounds like this. Next time, the VO will explicitly use the words advisory, caution, and stop, and the pilot will utilize closed-loop repetition. That is an operational upgrade.
And notice the framing, right? You must separate the person from the behavior.
Right. You don't point a finger and say, oh, and you distracted me and almost caused a crash.
You focus on the system. You say, client questions reached the pilot during a high workload landing phase. The system failed to block the leak. Next time, the handler will physically step between the client and the pilot during descent.
It removes the ego, removes the shame, and focuses entirely on designing a more resilient workflow.
But the reality is, absolutely none of this debriefing process works if the leader or the pilot in command does not actively model ego-less behavior themselves.
The pilot sets the temperature of the room.
If the pilot is defensive, the crew will stay silent. The pilot has to actively thank the crew for early warnings. They have to praise the false alarms. They have to prioritize the integrity of the process over their own personal pride to create an environment where admitting what stayed unsaid feels completely safe.
If you don't have that trust, you don't have a team.
Let's step back and survey the massive journey we've just taken. We started by dismantling the comforting optical illusion of the extra body, proving that safety isn't about physical presence, it's about engineering a unified mission brain.
We escape the trap of checklist theater.
Right, by realizing that reading words off a screen is useless, but speaking them aloud is the ultimate crew alignment tool. We explored the deeply biological reality of task saturation, how the brain literally narrows its perception under stress.
And how the priority ladder prevents us from making catastrophic choices to appease a client.
We redefined the visual observer, stripping away the passive spotter identity and replacing it with the proactive time machine, constantly scanning 5 distinct worlds.
We learned that being socially polite with nervous squirrel warnings will get you into trouble.
And that the rigid precision of closed-loop communication is the true language of survival. We locked down the sterile cockpit to block the dreaded client leak. And finally, we learned how to brutally, honestly debrief the unsaid.
It is a phenomenal, comprehensive framework for taking a group of flawed, easily distracted individuals and turning them into a highly resilient thinking system capable of handling extreme cognitive load.
And that brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with. We have spent this deep dive in the weeds of aviation mechanics, drone regulations, and visual observer scan loops. But I want you to think about your own professional life, your own daily environment.
It applies everywhere.
Think about your next massive project launch, your next high-stakes presentation, or your next complex team meeting. Ask yourself, are you and your team relying on checklist theater? Are you just confirming positive vibes instead of interrogating reality?
A huge question.
When a project starts slowly drifting off the rails, are you using polite, vague warnings like, I think we might have a slight issue with this deadline? Or are you using precision callouts to force a necessary stop?
What is the client leak in your own workflow?
Exactly. What are the constant pings, slacks, and requests that hit your brain right when you are at your maximum cognitive capacity?
The technology and the environment change, but the underlying human factors remain exactly the same.
And most importantly, when your team finally crosses the finish line on a massive project, are you brave enough to sit them down in a room, check your ego at the door, and ask them, what did you notice today, but decide not to say?
That's the real test.
Because if you are just solo flying with an audience, pretending that the sheer presence of a team equals a functional system, you are eventually going to crash. But if you can build a culture that answers that question honestly, you might just save your next mission. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep your communication closed loop, and we will catch you next time. That's a wrap on today's mission, Commander. See above, go beyond, get ahead. For more training, tools, and intel, head to skycommander.ca. If you learned something new, share it, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star debrief.